Good day and welcome to my channel. My name is Rhod Mackenzie and today I want to talk about Finland again. How damn things just got worse for Finland. Let me explain. For many years Finland and the Soviet Union cooperated in a number of ways, particularly during the Cold War, and this continued when it collapsed and then Russia took over the agreements which benefited both parties. Then of course we know Finland decided to reject its 80 years of neutrality and join NATO. Since then, things between the two countries have become strained, and for Finland they've become economically disastrous with record levels of unemployment, higher energy and food costs, and plus it's now got no economic growth and its economy is in recession. Now for Finland just got worse. It's been announced that it's ended its cooperation with Helsinki on the operation of the hydroelectric plants on the border of the river the Vuoksi. Having rejected Russia's electricity imports, the Finns will no longer receive compensation they've become accustomed getting over the last half century. So why are the consequences of this move far greater than commonly understood? Well, goodbye free allowance. Now, according to an order by the Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, Articles 3 and 4 of the 1972 agreement between the USSR and Finland have been terminated. Now, this document regulated the shared use of the Vuoksi River, one of the most complex river systems in Northern Europe. The river flows from Lake Sama, connecting Finnish lakes with Lake Lagoda and forming a natural hydroelectric cascade comprising two Finnish and two Russian hydroelectric power plants. Now, to ensure the plant's continued optimised operations, the water levels, flow schedules and other parameters were coordinated between the two countries. However, at the time it was discovered that the construction of the Russian Sverdogorsk hydroelectric plant had reduced the output of the Finnish Imatra hydroelectric power station. Now, before I continue, many of you watching this video are not subscribers to my channel, so if you've enjoyed this video, then please hit the subscribe button and also click on the alert bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Plus, if you want to support me, you can make a donation by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom right hand side of the screen, or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the credits. Now, because of that, in an effort to maintain good relations with Finland, the Soviet Union agreed to compensate for the shortfall by supplying additionally free of charge electricity to Finland. So Helsinki received an additional 20,000 megawatt hours annually on top of the electricity it bought from the Soviet Union. However, in April 2022, Finland unilaterally stopped buying electricity from Russia after the start of the special military operation in the Ukraine and the imposition of EU sanctions on Russia, which they joined. So let's look at the cost of the issue. Now, the USSR, literally Russia, regularly supplied neighbouring countries with inexpensive energy resources and ensured the transit of their products in exchange for goods and equipment. Now, it's not just Finland, as the Baltic states also benefited, which is why they are now in trouble, because they lost Russia's cheap energy too. Now, this cheap power allowed the Finnish economy to remain one of the most prosperous in Europe for a considerable period of time. However, the current Finnish border regions are experiencing serious problems, and that's mainly due to a lack of Russian tourists and the trade revenues they used to get. Now there's not going to be any free electricity either, says the Igor Yushkov, who's a member of the Russian Energy Security Fund. Now it appears Helsinki is trying to find other sources for its energy supplies. For example, construction's underway on the Aurora line, a power link bridge with Sweden, which is scheduled to open in late November. Now this project's already cost 300 million to date, with 127 billion euros of that coming from the European Union. Now, according to the Finnish energy operator Fingrid, this line will increase the cross-border transmission capacity to 1,900 megawatts. Now, there's already two cables to Estonia, but there's not enough electricity there, as Estonia has also suffered for not being part of anymore of the Russia-Belarus-Baltic connector, which provided cheap energy and solutions. 3 more energy bridges they have, the better. Sweden is a very reliable partner and a fairly large energy producer, but their energy grid's dependent on the weather and the precipitation. If there's little rain and snow, then there's little energy generation. So ultimately, it's a matter of cost. Given Finland's growing defence spending since it joined NATO, it certainly couldn't manage without taking out more loans, which need to be repaid plus interest. How are they going to do this with a stagnating economy remains an open question. Now there's a new blow. Analysts believe that the country is facing serious economic and energy challenges. Firstly, the country's dependence on supplies from Norway and Sweden will increase. Moreover, the geography of the Scandinavian peninsula hinders electricity imports between them. I mean, you can also see this because of what happened with the massive power grid failure that hit the Iberian Peninsula in the spring of 2025. Sunny Spain and Portugal were plunged into pitch darkness and a massive power collapse, and that could happen across the Scandinavia. Secondly, the cost of building alternative facilities continues to rise. That includes biofuels, renewable energy sources and nuclear power plants, all of which are expensive. Now, nuclear power, as we know, is especially beneficial for peaceful purposes. Finland currently has 2 nuclear power plants and 5 operating nuclear reactors on the Baltic Sea coast. However, many of these units are outdated and too dangerous to operate. For example, heat waves near the Loviisa nuclear power plant in July increased the temperature of the seawater, which threatened the cooling system. Now, a hydrogen leak was also detected there in May, so Helsinki is made worse for itself in this respect. I mean, back in the mid-2010s, Russia and Finland were constructing a nuclear power plant in Hankivi with the help of Rosatom, Russia's major nuclear company. However, the Finns terminated the contract unilaterally once again, so the existing structure was demolished, and Rosatom still after its compensation. Now let's look at the Finnish government's political views don't particularly concern me. In my view, they should pay Rosatom for the losses incurred during the first phase of this construction and for creating the project. And that's the view of the Rosatom CEO, Alex Lishachev. Now let's look at the northern rivers and how they're now flowing in reverse, because Finland's lost the right to coordinate the operating mode of Russian hydroelectric power plants. So now Russia can change the discharges at their own discretion without the regard for Helsinki's interests, which is going to have a negative impact on Lake Sama, possibly leading to its either shallowing or flooding, according to Yulia Davidova, who's a professor at the Russian University of Economics. Now that's also going to stop the operation of Finland's 2 hydroelectric dams on the river, and they're going to really feel the loss of electricity from them. Plus, of course, the lake is the largest in Finland, and it's critically important for the environment, for shipping, fishing and tourists. So, according to Davidova, the legal consequences are going to be even more unpleasant. If the Finns have lost the right for compensation for the electricity supply agreement, Helsinki is not going to be able to claim preferential supplies if and when relations are then normalised. I mean, Moscow's attitude is no document, no compensation, no agreement. And Moscow's going to stick to that agreement, I would say. Now, the natural features of the Vuoksi hydroelectric cascade will also remain unchanged. In other words, the risk to the Finnish economy is going to increase exponentially with the loss of these decade-long ties. They're losing the water, they're losing the electricity, and they're losing their economy. So that's what happens when you piss off the Russians. Well, join NATO. Well done, Finland. You shot yourself in both feet again. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all again soon.